convene with Messrs. Lawson, Johnson, and all the other council members on deck. James Branch, do you mind reading the first thing on the agenda, and we'll see if there's anything else to be added? Incidentally, I think the microphone is such so you should be able to hear us. I will therefore be very careful with my vocabulary.
The first item on the agenda is to consider final adoption of an ordinance authorizing acceptance of subdivision plat for Pecan Grove North subdivision, lots 1 through 43. And on this particular action, the administration does not recommend taking this action.
Okay, are there any comments concerning either rejecting or approving this adoption?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I would recommend that we approve it. The subdivision we've asked them to do certain things, and they've completed those items. They've spent quite a considerable amount of finances going into it. And I think it's something it's the right thing to do, to me. And although it's in my district, I might catch the heat from it, but I think it's the right thing to do.
To object to it?
To
Approve it?
approve it.
All right. Any other comment?
Well, this is an acceptance of a plat, as I understand it. The property's already been annexed into the city.
Right.
If I'm not mistaken.
That's correct.
There would be consequences that we would expose ourselves to if we took action adverse to this at this point. The mayor is certainly right in his providing notes of caution, and it was previously authorized prior to his election, so he's not opposing it. It's just that he has a caution note on the fact sheet for it. I think we have an obligation, since we approved this a long time ago, to accept the plat, and I think that's what should be done in this particular case.
Are there any comments from anybody on the floor? Sir. Roosevelt's going to tell you to stand over there, state your name, classification, rank, serial number, the whole bit.
I'm Mr. Watkins. I live in the Walnut Grove subdivision. And comments I have concerning this is that the drainage may not be as adequate as what you might think. Have you been out there recently to look at that property to see how much drainage has been provided? Anybody? You have?
I know that they reconstructed a ditch, cleaned it out, and it's better than it was.
It's been there for years and years. They cleaned it out. And I was looking at it. It stays full of water. I look at it almost every day because I walk down that way. And I'm more concerned now than I was before because of the fact that with the little bit of rain we had, the water remained in that ditch. And I'm more concerned that when we do have a big rain, that the water from I-49 is going to back up into that ditch instead of draining out of the ditch. So that's my concern on drain. And the Mr. Bruce said that they were going to clean two more ditches. There's one more ditch by Ms. Garrett's property that needs to be cleaned, definitely. It should have been cleaned a long time ago. The third ditch, I don't know where that one is. And if it was the one that the developer was supposed to provide, the city backed off on that one. They wasn't going to take care of it, so you backed out of it. So I'm concerned about the drainage situation being improved. I'm not sure. The second item that I had, I was just wondering from a legal standpoint, that the name on the plat refers to Pecan Grove North subdivision. All other documents prior to this merely say Pecan Grove subdivision.
I can answer that for you, Mr. Watkins.
Very good.
There was already a Pecan Grove subdivision within the corporate limits of Alexandria, so we required them to change it to Pecan Grove North, so there wouldn't be a confusion between the two different subdivisions.
This has already been done?
Yes.
Okay. I was just wondering if this item would stand up for that property under the...
We required
Okay.
that.
Thank you very much.
Okay, just for the record, the administration, has had what's sort of a smart growth concept, and that is the main reason, if I understand, for their concern. But as one of our councilmen capably pointed out, this was done in a previous administration, and we did provide for it. However, will be governed by the will of the masses, and I therefore ask the council, our committee, to take action. All those in favor, will I have a motion if you wish it?
I move that we uphold the previous recommendation of the administration, the previous administration.
I second it.
All right, any further discussion? If not, then we'll recommend that. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, in that case, we'll mention that, make that recommendation. Now, I understand you have a couple of things which came in late or something else we have to discuss.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, I have two zoning issues I'd like to introduce through committee to go on the council agenda. And one is the rezoning of 755 MacArthur Drive from a B2 to C2 as requested by the property owner so that they may continue using this property as a fast food enterprise. The minutes were not ready in time to get on the regular agenda, so I'd like to introduce this item now, as it'll be a month before we can actually do final adoption on it, since it is a zoning matter.
And whose district is that?
This is in Mr. Marshall's district,
Again?
District 1.
Okay. There's a motion?
Yeah, I move introduction.
Second?
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Well, we'll present that at the meeting. Now, what else do you have?
I have, the second item is rezoning the property on Tulane and Brown Streets from SF2 to a diverse use corridor. It's to build a range of housing opportunities and business space for mutual participation. This is something that would be good for the area. I've talked to Mr. Smith about it. It's in his district, and he was highly in favor of it. Zoning Commission also approved it.
Second.
All right, any further discussion?
What is it exactly?
That's a duct that they're going to try to,
Okay.
Diverse use corridor along Tulane and Brown.
all right, if not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? If you present those, and we'll read those at the committee, at the council meeting this afternoon. Do you have anything else to bring?
That's all. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Does anyone have anything from the floor while we still have about 2 or 3 minutes? If not, we're right on target, and we will have finished our first assignment. Okay, if not, Public Works Zoning will adjourn. Thank you.
The legal committee will come to order. President committee members are Mr. Johnson, Mr. Lawson. We have 3 items. The first item, administration has asked that this item be delayed. So we'll fall into item number 2. Okay, I'll read item number 1 and then it will be delayed. To consider final adoption of an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into professional service agreement with KJA Communication Group for the maintenance and production of programming for the city government access channel and development of the city's website. Again, I say the administration asks that this be delayed. So we go to number 2. To consider final adoption of an ordinance amending section 4-25A 1 of the Alexandria City Code relating to requirements for security devices and standards for certain alcohol beverage license permit. And it's book item number 21. And Chief, you gonna speak on it?
Yeah, myself and Sergeant Lynch. Gentlemen, what this is related to what we passed, I think, last year concerning requiring Class B license, liquor licenses to have video cameras in the stores. Well, what we didn't require was a time limit. In other words, sometimes you have people go in and pass a couple of $100 bills that are counterfeit, and there's a camera shot of them, but it gets erased before we have a chance to go look at it. So we want to increase that time limit to 30 days. If you got some technical questions, Sergeant Leach has come from APD to discuss those with you. But that's all it is, try to increase it to a 30-day time limit for that to keep the video on hand.
I move.
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Lawson, seconded by Mr. Johnson. Discussion.
Gentlemen, the only problem that we saw with this ordinance is that there was no requirement of a time limit that these businesses were required to keep the recordings. In other words, they could record 1 day's worth of video, and the very next day they could take that recording medium and re-record over it. Therefore, we were not having any kind of a record of recordings. This came to light after a crime was committed at one of the ATMs inside one of these particular businesses, and we did not find out about it until 3 days later. When we found out about it, we went to get the recording of the person who had committed the crime, but it had already been recorded over. So there was no provision to require the businesses to keep the recording medium, whether that was a VHS tape, a DVD, or a CD, whatever the case may be. So,
Help me understand, the ATM was stolen out of the store.
no, sir, the ATM wasn't stolen out of the store. Someone accessed the ATM to make an unauthorized withdrawal from it with
Okay.
a debit card.
That's it. I think it's a great idea. So, how often do we check these establishments? Do we do periodic checks to make sure they are adhering to our ordinance?
The very first check that I'm aware of, Mr. Lawson, was in this particular case here. It was a fairly new ordinance. Now, that's just what I'm aware of. I don't know if any other checks had been done, but we're hoping that if this measure passes today, once it is enacted, we're going to begin doing spot checks of these different businesses on a surprise basis.
What's the penalty if they don't abide by the ordinance that we would pass in this measure?
Mr. Johnson, I don't have a copy of it with me, so I don't know. Chief?
I think it's in the ordinance.
Mr. Leach, and the chief asked us to work on this. This would be subject to the general provisions, which is a misdemeanor fine. It could also be considered part of the point system tabulations, Mr. Johnson, where you develop so many points, you could run the risk of your license. It would be one of a number of other considerations. It would be the normal misdemeanor that any violation of the code of ordinance would impair.
Right, I just want to make sure that we had something in place to make sure that if they didn't abide by the laws and measures that were set by the standard, that we would have some form of policy to protect it.
And we do have that. It would continue the existing penalty as it currently stands. And Mr. Johnson, we've also provided that the effective date of this ordinance will be March the 1st, because we wanted to give people that much time to hear this announcement today. Mr. Leach and the chief have been working on this, and they felt that the implementation date of March 1st would be a sufficient time period for all of those license holders to get up to speed, to begin their retention policy before the department begins their inspections.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we'll refer to the full council. The administration has asked that item number 3 be delayed for 2 weeks. So do we have any other business coming before legal? If not, state your name and
My name is Eric Hunt, and I'm the owner and operator of Eric Hunt Associates. And I would like to go on record and say that I'm interested in the bid and helping to maintain the government access channel. I have copies of my proposal here that I'd like to submit to you all.
go ahead.
What you made, and you certainly can submit it, but I want to make sure that if you want to compete, maintain your competitive edge. I think that maybe the wishes of the administration and the council that we actually consider an RFP in this process. And if we're going to do that, I don't know if you want to release your thunder at this point, but it's up to you.
But just like I said, I just want to go on record stating that I'm interested in the business.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you. Do we have any other business?
Eric, you want to submit this now, or you want to hold it till the RFP comes? It doesn't matter to us, but it's a public record if you leave with me.
Okay.
I can submit it now.
This meeting's adjourned.
Economic Development Committee to order. Item number 1 is to hear an update report from the administration concerning the spray parks. I see Ms. Lisa Harris approaching the podium.
Go ahead, I didn't complain about it this week.
Mr. Lawson, just to give you an update on where we are with the completion of the spray pads, last Thursday, the consultant, Mark Hatchell, was in town, and he did meet with the city engineer and Darren Green, the urban forester, to go over, once again, the sites, and he has looked at all 3 sites, and in 2 weeks, he will be back with me with preliminary designs for the spray pads. As you know, when I came to you before, that process is actually going to come back to you all, where we would get input from administration, council, and the community on the designs of those different spray pads. So that's where we are right now.
Thank you. Any questions?
Any questions, you might?
Comments? Thank you.
Okay.
Item number 2 is here an update from the administration concerning the Gateway and Build Board projects. I know we had a very successful retreat. I didn't know if you were in a position to report on that now, Mr. S.
Absolutely.
Rural economic development for the city of Louisiana. See, if I was in the Gator meeting, I'd say it'd be Clifford Moeller from Gator. I said Clifton. I said Elton Pody when I'm around the table. Kind of busy, huh? This is something we've been talking about. It's arduous task. It seems like it's easy, but when we're doing gateways and signage, we have a lot of issues to research, and I think the administration is certainly in the middle of doing this on the commitment. Yes, what appears to be a pretty detailed.
Well, we've discussed this numerous times before, and I think now it's time to come to a resolution of it. And I just want to go through it again with you, and first talk about the gateway signage. Gateway signage, as we talked about before, is a higher end type of signage that basically welcomes folks to our city, acknowledges the entrance, the gateways to our city. It involves signage that is on a much higher level. It's a wood carved type of a sign. It's a permanent sign. It's not the billboards that we were talking about. I'll get to that in a little bit. It's also a signage area that has permanent landscaping that is changed out periodically throughout the seasons of the year, and we've been able to work out arrangements with utilizing some of our inmate labor to assist us on doing just that. However, to start out with, the initial locations that is being suggested, and keep in mind, in jumping to the end of the report in reference to this, these are recommended locations, but we're looking at doing a total of 3 locations per year for a total of 9 locations. So quite frankly, these initial first-year locations, it's not that relevant that we specifically use these suggested locations. Council has the right to certainly to have an input on this, and let us know 3 locations if you have any differences as far as these suggestions are concerned. The idea of doing 3 per year is just, quite frankly, for budgetary purposes, so that we can spread these expenses out over a 3-year period of time. Because as you'll see, the estimated cost of the sign panels themselves is $12,000 each. Now, these have a long life expectancy, but that's $36,000 for 3 signs. Landscaping, as I indicate below, is 1,000 square feet per signage area, and the estimate for that is $3 a square foot, but that adds up to $9,000 for 3 signs. And then you incorporate the drip irrigation system in, which is certainly needed in this part of the country, and that's at $1,500 each, so that's another $4,500. And then the lighting is another $1,500 each, so that's $4,500. So at the end of the day, you're looking at a $54,000 price tag estimated for 3 signs. So that's why we were talking about spreading this out over a 3-year period of time so that it can be budgeted for. But again, these locations are suggested locations, and I've heard from folks that are they have some other thoughts on where the location should go. That's something that I really defer to City Council. But I'd like to be able to receive the okay to proceed with going out and going out to bid on these things. $54,000 is I think significant, but it's something that we've agreed to as needed. So that's the dialogue regarding the gateway signage. If you want to chat about that for a little
The
bit.
design would be the city logo? Or?
Yes, that's the city logo, the new city logo, and it would be a welcome type of sign. But the predominant image would be our city logo, like you see on my pin here.
It's really 162,000, is that what it is?
Well, times if you do 9 signs, and just trying to spread that hit out over a 3-year period of time. We can, if you want to do it quicker, we can do it quicker.
Sylvan, and I see Mr. Johnson.
The only suggestion I have is what you mentioned earlier, that there be some flexibility in the initial location and future location,
Sure.
depending on how the traffic thing works and what our analysis
Yeah.
says, rather than just let it set, because even in a set specific location, it's amazing how after a certain length of time, other than newcomers, they just don't see it any longer.
Yeah, I don't want to be married to a specific sign location. I think that's something that we do as a group and determine where we're going to put it. But we need to, for the sake of proceeding, I'd like to, as I said, get the approval to move forward with and follow proper purchasing procedures and at least get the first 3 underway. And of course, we'd come back to you with, the proof of what the sign would look like and so on and that type of stuff.
We've talked about this for the last 2 years. We have had it in committee, we've discussed this, we've reviewed this project just as Mr. Hess has stated, and I think it's time for us to move to get this done based on his proposal, based on what he would like to come back before this council with. So it will be my recommendation based on the gateway signage. What he's provided for us today is to allow him, based on the administration, as council, to move forward with this project.
Are you including that recommendation? Do I have a second? And moving properly second. We have more discussion, but I want to make sure we have clarification on the initial location. Mr. Fowler.
I have no problem with the locations as stated. One thing that I'd like to consider or have the administration and council consider is to identify the 9 locations and then approach them, I guess, maybe with the highest traffic count first, and then go to the lowest traffic count to have more exposure with the gateways. Otherwise, that's just a thought. And these may well be the highest traffic count areas. I don't know how you derived at locations, but
Well,
that's what I would suggest.
I'll defer to Kay on that one.
She's probably wrong.
Ms. McGill.
Never wrong, and if you haven't learned
I'm
that
sorry,
yet.
I'm sorry, I never would have said that.
Actually, Darren Green has been looking at this for a while. Darren Green is the urban forester. And he drove around and surveyed all of the different locations that would qualify as gateways. And when we sat down and talked about it, we thought these were the most appropriate for sort of the inner city part, and then we would move out from there. They were just the 3 locations that we thought fit for our initial plan to move forward with. One is at Highway 1 as you come in from Marksville, and then one is over here when you come across the Jackson Street Bridge right behind the Riverfront Center. And then the third one is as you come off of I-49 onto Martin Luther King Drive, sort of by Shiloh Baptist Church, and that's a really nice location for one. Those are all 3 very suitable locations. They'll be very visible. The signage that he's looked at is comparative to the signage that Pineville has when you go across the Purple Heart Bridge. In fact, he's talked to the same company that constructed their gateway, so it would be very similar to that.
Okay, well, if it's the pleasure of the committee, we'll move that second.
I so move.
Second. No discussion? You know?
Very good.
Anybody?
The next item is the billboard proposal for marketing. Now, we have a bit of a issue here. Since the approval or the subject talk about KJA's contract has been tabled, the pricing that I have is through both Lamar Advertising, number one, and also through KJA as the marketing agency that would handle this. Keep in mind that these arrangements go back to October that I've been working on this, and so it'd be nice to get past the KJA issue because if we approve this, I'm going to have to go directly to Lamar Advertising. Not that that's a problem, but you can get a reduction in the fee by going through an agency like KJA versus going directly to Lamar. So I just want to point out that because of that, that delay and so on, that this is creating a bit of a glitch in this. You almost need one without the,
Is that a legal or a moral error?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't know if I got approval. It's like, who do I contract with? KJA, we just had discussions with them because they would handle the changing out of the advertising panels and so on, and act as our agent to do that, rather because I'm a little stretched myself because in my division it's me, myself, and I.
I guess I probably push the billboard issue as much as anyone. I'd like to see the plan for the billboards. What is it going to do to invite folk that typically would pass through our city to exit and visit our city? Is what I'd like to see.
Yeah,
I probably want to see a little bit
more. Well, I have a full report that I would be happy to give you. Matter of fact, it may have been presented back in October, but
I would recommend that you proceed on the basis that right now KJ is eliminated from the mix, and let's see if we have to have it no matter what happens.
Well, okay, it changes the numbers around somewhat. They're higher with Lamar Advertising, but
do the advertising on our buses?
they get an agency discount, and that's how that works. So but the whole concept of this was to come up with initially 6 locations of billboards that would be placed at the various entry points into the city. I-49 is an example as you're coming from the south heading north, and to be able to offer to motorists the opportunity to see just what's going on at the specific time within the city of Alexandria, so that they would afford them an option of either coming into our city or taking a loop around. It ranges from from events such as Queuing on the Red as an obvious example to a standard invitation to visit our zoo, to indicate that there's, shopping, retail just ahead, those type of things. And then also, it would allow us to change out in a very quick, timely manner so that we could address community functions that are occurring, whatever they may be. We have a lot going on in the city. And if nothing more than the acknowledgement of where you're at, welcome to Alexandria, Louisiana. So it would the fact that we do 6 billboards, we're looking at a cost, including change out of the artwork and so on, in a neighborhood of about $3,800 to $4,000 a month if you go with all 4, or all 6 rather, and that includes changing out, assuming you're changing out on a monthly basis. If you don't change out, it's not going to be as expensive.
Silver was next, and then Mr. Johnson.
What I was going to say is your concern and the fact that we don't have them yet, and we may have something at the next meeting, I would suggest that we put everything on hold, give you an opportunity to submit what you have at the moment, just look at aesthetically and put that on hold.
I regret. I really hadn't planned on delaying this at all. It's pretty difficult to have a discussion about this when you don't have an agreement in place with a KJA who we had planned on using. And so if we can get past that issue and then, but you can do this, but, I'm somewhat impatient, and I really share the feelings of Councilman Johnson that, we really got to get moving on this, to be simplistic about it.
Mr. Johnson.
Going back to the billboards, you're looking at also the animated. I know Lamar has the new type billboards now. They
do have those. These are not included in that. The price of those are considerably more, but they're doable. They last, for each message, I believe, is 12 seconds. 10 to 12 seconds that it stays on, and then it switches out. The price is a little bit more. They're eye-catching, there's no doubt about that. And we could go that route. It's a few $100s more.
What are we looking at so far as the differential on cost versus Lamar versus not having KJA to participate in this process?
Sure. From what I can see, there's a reduction in cost of of changing out the print. It's a lesser cost of artwork. There is a reduction of a few $100s in the actual direct purchase. I'm just looking at my notes here to try to give you something a little bit more than that. Okay, let's take one example of the example of Pineville Expressway. Through Lamar, it's $1,050 a month. KJA, you save $30. The $30 reduction. Another example is, let's see. It's about like that, like $100 here and there. It's not significant.
Where are we with our queuing on the red advertisement? Is that tied to this?
Well, we would.
It's separate and apart.
Well, we would incorporate that special event into this signage, but other than that, it's no direct correlation.
Now, did we make a commitment, a soft commitment to utilize their artwork, KJA's artwork on this?
No, but there's been no commitment since there's been no contract. So.
I guess my thing is I would like to go forward, eventually get something done, but by the same token, I'd like to see what we're doing. I do remember you giving us something very nice, but I'd like us to see that we're encouraging people and luring them to get off the interstate. When I say luring, I don't mean hoodwinking them, saying it's 200 restaurants and exit here and you see 17 7-Elevens. But something that's going to lure people to come off the interstate. is what I'm
Well,
understanding.
I'll recopy my October report, and then if you'd like, I'll also ask for some examples of artwork and just what they would look like.
Maybe a PowerPoint.
And I'll be more than happy to do it.
For clarity,
Let me make this clear. I didn't quite understand your numbers on the KJ versus Lamar. Is that $30 a sign per month?
Yeah, that's what, I'm just one example. I looked at the Pineville.
$1,440
It's,
a year for 4 signs?
Lamar is $1,050 per month, and KJ is $1,020.
That times 4 signs?
And they all vary. They're all different, their prices, depending on, that's the most expensive one. Following that, you have one for,
And what does Lamar charge to do artwork and hang it versus KJ?
yeah. Well, let's see if I can,
Sure, I want Lamar to know. No offense to Lamar.
no, I'm not, it's, let's see.
Not Lamar White.
Yeah, it's not.
How many signs you have, Lamar?
The artwork is anywhere, I mean, the side panel is anywhere from $175 to $500 for Lamar. And it appears to be about the same, or again, just slightly under for KJA. From what I can tell, looking at this, we're only looking at $30, $40, $50, something like that on each particular situation.
KJA is less than Lamar, correct?
But what I want to make a point out is that there's a big difference between Bill Hess calling Lamar and following through the entire procedure versus KJA handling it. Unless we want to assign this to some staff, I don't, I'm just a one-person show here. So, I mean, quite honestly, I don't think I can keep up with all this stuff. Okay,
I'd like to see some of your design work before we let you do it.
You would? Okay. I'll draw something out on
Mr.
that.
Hobbs, and then I think Mr. Johnson was next.
Well, my thought was that since Lamar put the signage on our buses, why we couldn't go to them with some kind of deal. We're not making no big money off what they're doing on the buses anyway. And that would offset some of the costs. If, you know, on what they're doing on the buses.
Okay.
Because
All right.
I think, you know, there should be some kind of proposal, something where we can offset, we can advertise on our buses, if we can, you advertise us on the billboard.
I think that's something that needs to be considered. Why don't we just, Mr. Johnson may suggest this, but let's sharpen the pencil a little bit more on this piece with Lamar and go forward on the gateway signage, which I'm very pleased with. Mr. Johnson?
Yes, that's what I wanted to say, is that in the point of clarification, let's move forward with the Gateway project and come back with the artwork and design on the,
Massage this some more.
right, for the billboards. Move forward with the Gateway.
I think that motion's already been made.
Right, that motion will carry.
Okay, that's fine. Appreciate that direction.
Look forward to a PowerPoint,
Absolutely.
whatever we need to see on
I'll put it in print and distribute it to council.
PowerPoint.
Thank you.
Okay. Item number 3 is to discuss policy and procedures for the government access channel. I just spent an hour, I think, visiting with the mayor on this and getting an update on successful retreat, which I commend my colleagues on participating. And I think at this point we need to lay it over. I just think that it's come to the point where we ought to develop some policies and procedures as to how we're going to operate the government access channel. So if it's the wishes of this body, I'm going to ask that we lay this over and come back another day on it. Okay? Okay. Item number 4, any other business needs to come before the Economic Development Committee? Hearing none, Economic Development Committee is adjourned. Actually, we take a 15-minute break between now and the Finance Committee. Go ahead and call on one of the Finance Committee meeting, February 12, 2008. Members present, yours truly, Mr. Silver and Mr. Hobbs. Item number 1 is a resolution authorizing the payment of Ms. Tony Martin and John Scott for legal fees and expenses incurred in civil suit number 229 053. Motion? Move.
Need a second.
Second.
Second,
Question?
Well, discussion.
Yeah, that's a question.
So I don't know how we can pay a bill with a resolution without a contract. You pay a bill with an ordinance, but I don't think you pay it with a resolution.
I'm on the committee, can I say something?
Of course.
Are you finished, Counselor? Okay. The reason I didn't vote is that I think it's irregular at this time since we have litigation pending, and I therefore feel that it would not be in the best interest of all concerned to resolve this in this manner.
You have a question? I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mr. Sir.
At this time.
Okay. All in favor, aye? Opposed, motion carries. Opposed? Let the record reflect Mr. Silva. Item number 2 is a resolution requesting that RFPs be received for any and all professional service consulting agreements for the city of Alexandria. This was put on there not to probably be as inclusive as it appears to be, but I certainly think that we need to proceed with several categories, and the mayor, I think, discussed this during the very productive retreat that council joined in with, and we had some detailed discussion earlier today, Mayor, on this. So, if you will, why don't we come back and come up with those things that we'd like to go out and do RFPs for, and will be in the interest of the taxpayers. Any questions on it? Okay. No, just lay it over, come back, okay. Okay, item number 3 is discussion, establishing a committee for requesting for proposals for an internal auditor. I think we have a motion out there on this, and I don't know if we necessarily need a committee, but we'll come back with maybe a solution to have an auditor. And this was something I also received a memo on from the mayor that they're in concert working with independent company to do some spot auditing, if you will, on various areas within the city of Alexandria. I think it's something that's long overdue. I think we've taxed our finance director, who does a fine job for us, but when you become a $230, probably $240 million entity by the next fiscal year rolling around, it certainly warrants us at least having the opportunity to have someone in place to do these type things suggested. I also talked with Mr. Ernest Sasser, who's our auditor, and he thinks it's a good idea as well as the mayor and the director of finance. Any questions on this?
Yeah, I would recommend that we're not talking about a classified person, but just if we do something, but I think that both someone from Painmore and Harrington, someone from the finance committee, something from the administration, need to see what guidelines they might wish to have before they come back with any concrete recommendations.
That's what we're suggesting. And that certainly won't be a full-time employee, so I think the intent here is to have someone that will contract with the city. Okay? All right, any other questions? Item number 4, to consider final adoption of the ordinance authorizing the 2007-2008 major budget amendment. That's book item number 23, if you will. And Finance Director, Mr. Crutchfield, who I've been meeting with, has this in hand. Questions, comments? You've had this for quite some time.
Yes.
You want to highlight any particulars, Mr. Crutchfield?
Well, I guess briefly, would just remind everyone that this is something we do once a year to true up those budget items that are estimates such as fuel, telephone cost, supplies, maintenance and repairs, revenue items that may change and change from our initial projections. At the bottom of page 1 of the major budget amendment schedule,
is the item for use of prior year revenues, which is our use of fund balance. And I'd like to point out that we had budgeted originally $6.9 million use of prior year revenues. And with the adjustments made in this major budget amendment, we'll be reducing that estimated use of prior year's revenues, or budgeted use of prior year's revenues, by $3.1 million.
Will you repeat that? That's for the benefit of the public.
Right, we'll be reducing the use
Possible
of
that-
prior year
that
fund balance.
any of this will be used before the year is out?
Well, with only a couple of months left to go, I think these estimates are fairly accurate. And in fact, we probably will see even less of an improvement over that, because that assumes full expenditure of everything that's remaining. And we know we have a lot of job vacancies, so that salary attrition for the last few months, this reclaims the salary attrition for the first 7 months of the year, fiscal year, but the remaining salary attrition would be reclaimed at the end of the fiscal year. So,
This is what you're going to talk about?
if there's any
Speak to
questions.
attrition, by the way. And if you read the budget, you would note that the numbers appear to be somewhat high in public safety when you look at overtime. I think it's a situation where we certainly have not had all the positions filled, and I think that they've certainly worked hard. Not only that, with the firefighters and public works as well. I want to commend the administration on not just jumping and filling positions. There are several positions in there that you can probably just fill willingly, and not necessarily because of a delay in getting folk hired. I think that folk are taking prudent looks at whether these positions ought to be filled. And I think that's good, and I want to commend, as I mentioned earlier, administration on doing that. And also on the preparation of the MBA.
Okay. I would, Mr. Chairman, like to mention some things specifically. The last page that you have is an addendum to the original major budget amendment that we sent down. And the major item on that page, I'd like to point out, is the addition of $100,000 funding to a capital project for the Ruston Foundry site. I think that's been discussed in some council meetings, but I wanted to let you know that that funding is included in here.
Ms. Bright?
It should be the last page, Mr. Silver.
Okay. $100,000, Mr. Smith.
Here's a copy of it, Mr. Silver, in case it...
The rest of the time. Okay. Any other questions?
I have one more question.
Yes, sir.
Are you through?
Unless anyone has questions about the document.
The only question I have, reviewing what we've done to date, are you cognizant of areas where we have significant weaknesses that may have to be adjusted so that you and administration can make the necessary corrections to finish out our year?
This document should make those adjustments to get us through the year on those variable items. Anything that's unforeseen, of course, we would come back to the council for an additional amendment. If an unforeseen circumstance arises, I'm not sure if that answers your question.
I would like to hear something, it's tied to the MBA, but I would like to hear a follow-up on our workforce and how we're doing. I'm very concerned, because I'm hearing small businesses starting to complain about finding workforce, and where we are on there, and maybe how we need to deal with it as a whole within the city. Any other questions?
Yes, I do. Mr. Crutchfield, on page 10, could you explain some of those items, the interest on sinking funds in relationship to the major budget amendment? That would be on page 10 under investment income. You have two line items that illustrates that. Interest on sinking funds, investment income.
Let's see.
On your
Okay,
bonds.
I see it. I'm sorry.
On the bonds.
Well, that's an item that we don't know. We always estimate conservatively on what the interest revenue would be on the money we set aside to make our bond principal and interest payments, our debt service payments. And as the year progresses and we know, we find out what the interest rates are running, then we make adjustments to that interest revenue. And we amend it into the budget, usually at major budget amendment time. But that's just bringing to actual our estimates of interest earnings in those sinking fund accounts.
Thank you.
I remember 5 years ago, the city was projected to be broke. Interestingly enough, how are we doing financially, Mr. Director?
Actually, do I have to say it? We're doing, the financial condition of the city is good. Fund balances was around 20 million, and we've projected, as I mentioned in this budget, a use of prior year fund balance of about 3.5 million. So 16 and a half, 17 million is the budgeted fund balance at the end of the year.
And that number can be misleading because we have a lot of obligations. I get warned every time I see that figure float out there, $17 million, because we have a lot of things pending, a lot of them may even be legal that we may have to utilize some of those funds. So, but the bottom line is, even considering our liabilities, we're pretty flush and able to carry out our duties as prescribed by the charter.
Right. And I would like to keep that in perspective. Our general fund budget is approaching $60 million a year, so, we have less than 4 months of expenses in cash or in fund balance, which is great, and but it's not excessive.
We're vulnerable if we're not careful.
Any other questions? All right, thank you again. Okay, a motion by Mr. Hobbs, second by the illustrious Mr. Harry Stiller. Any other questions? Hearing none, all in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Number 5, any other business needs to come before the Finance Committee meeting? Hearing none, meeting's adjourned.